Good morning, listeners. You're welcome to this week's Ag Report. I'm Jim Finn. My guests this morning are Michael Slattery from Inform Nutrition, Ewan Mullins from Teagasc, and Alan Dillon from Teagasc. My first guest this morning is Theo Broderick from Teagasc, and we are going to be discussing whole milk versus replacer. Good morning, Tia, and thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Jim, for having me on.
Okay, now, whole milk versus replacer.
Yes, so both whole milk and quality milk replacer, they're both effective in meeting the growing calf needs and providing the essential nutrients to growth, organ development, and supporting the developing immune system and the rumen of the calf. So I suppose where farmers choose to use milk replacer, consistency is key, and especially in terms of the person who's feeding the calves, that the mixing rate is correct, feeding at the correct time, so the same times every day, and sufficient volumes are offered. So it's very important in keeping feeding times the consistent every day. So I suppose similarly with whole milk, it is important that if you are feeding whole milk to your calves, that your herd is of a good health status. So we avoid feeding high somatic cell count milk, antibiotic milk, etc., to our replacement stocks in particular, to minimise disease transmission. So I suppose some herds would have ionis issues, and we want to prevent antimicrobial resistance, particularly in our replacement stock going forward. So in consideration to first is, making sure that we have an effective cluster management at the start, and ensuring our calves are provided in the correct environment. So I suppose when weighing up our options on whether to feed milk replacer or whole milk, there are two key considerations to bear in mind. So the milk replacer specifications, and particularly milk price, as we've seen the last couple of months, milk price has been dropping. So I suppose there are two things to take into consideration. So highlighting the key requirements of a milk replacer. So I suppose it is very important that we check all the labels of milk replacers and we compare before we purchase a milk replacer. So the main thing is looking at our nutrient content, and also the ingredients that are used to achieve this. So milk replacers should have a protein content between 23 to 26%, mainly from milk-derived proteins, but some will have vegetable proteins in them, and oil content between 16 to 20%, preferably a blend of coconut and palm oil. So the higher the fat content, it actually slows down the level of concentration a calf can consume, and it can lead to lower intakes at a 22 to 23% fat content. So whole milk generally actually has a high fat content, so as well that can reduce the amount of concentrates that our calves are consuming. So our daily live weight gains are slowed down when you have a higher content. A fiber content then shouldn't exceed 0.15%. So if the fiber content is higher than this, it can indicate that there's actually a higher level of plant protein. So that's not really ideal. That's not really what we want in our milk replacer. And the ash content then should be no higher than 8.5%. So if the ash content is higher than that, it generally means it's a whey-based product, but it also can lead to scouring calves. So there are some of the things to watch out for when picking a milk replacer if you're going to use a milk replacer compared to whole milk. I suppose the advantages of feeding a milk replacer, I suppose, in terms of labour, it's actually great in terms of if you're getting labour in and if it suited someone's time schedule, like they could come in before you're milking cows or whatever, what time to suit them every day earlier and feed the calves. Again, the same kind of in the evening time. Whereas if you were feeding whole milk, you'd have to wait obviously until the cows are milked to go and feed your calves. And so there's pros and cons to both. But I suppose where the protein stems from warrants attention in the milk replacer. So dairy-based proteins are more digestible to calves, particularly younger calves. So young calves less than 1 month can't utilise vegetable protein sources. So these milk replacers may be more appropriate to calving system farms where calves are more of a suitable age, so over 4 weeks of age. At this stage, some vegetable proteins are digestible. So what I'd say then, the skim-based milk and your whey-based milk are, there's two different types of skim, and there's whey-based milk replacers. So they're both milk-derived, and skim-based powders mainly come from butter making process. So you'd see this on your labels. You see skimmed and you see whey, and you're like, what does that mean? So the skim-based is coming from the butter making process, basically, and the whey-based then generally are derived from the cheese making process. So both of these achieve good calf performance if a good milk replacer is selected, okay? And you can get a good gate weight from both of these milk-derived products. So I suppose the main difference between the skim and the whey is that the skim-based products will actually form a curd in the calf's abomasum, whereas the whey-based one, a clot does not occur. So when a calf drinks the whey-based one, they are generally more digestible. They're able to digest it quicker, so it stimulates hunger more quicker, which encourages eating more concentrates. So I suppose that's what your end game that you want. You want your calf consuming more concentrate, more increase their daily gait weight, and to get them weaned quicker. So there is pros and there's cons to either, but skim-based calves feel fuller for longer. So maybe say up to about 12 hours, which is more suitable for once-a-day system. So you can't move your calves to once-a-day system until they're at least 28 days or 5 weeks old. Whereas the whey-based, like I said, doesn't curd, but it's digested in 2 to 3 hours, encourages high concentrate intakes at an earlier age, and it's suited for twice-a-day feeding. But both work just as well, but the skim is more suitable for the once-a-day if you're in that kind of system. So I suppose when you're talking about then whether to choose whole milk or milk replacer, so for example, if you took 2 bags of milk, if you took 2 bags of milk replacer and you did the costing, we're going to compare milk replacer, 2 bags of milk replacer, and say one costs €52 and the other costs €48, there's a difference of a cost over 70 days is €10.50 per calf. So, a small price to pay if the more expensive milk replacer delivers the performance required on farm, or an expensive cost to recover if cheaper. So a less suitable milk replacer leaves us, say, for example, a heifer calf behind target at an earlier stage. So there's a lot of benefit to using a milk replacer over a whole milk. So I suppose milk replacer, you have your consistent level of protein, whereas whole milk, that can fluctuate and cause stomach upset in calves and can cause scouring. And whole milk, you have your disease risk there as well. But I suppose in terms of before deciding whether you want to feed your calves whole milk or milk replacer, the start of that is making sure that they get an sufficient amount of colostrum into them. So at least between 14 to 15% of their body weight. And if you are vaccinating for Rotavirus, Lepto, Salmonella, or Crypto, any of those vaccines, to ensure they get those saturation milk for the first 5 to 7 days to make sure that passive immunity occurs. And then after that point, depending on your herd health, I suppose that's where it comes down to whether deciding to feed whole milk versus milk replacer. And yes, of course, milk price comes into consideration as well. But, the milk replacer takes a lot of guessing out of that. You know that what your product that you have and that it's consistent, and you have a good product there as well, that you're going to know that you're going to get a good growth and performance out of your calf.
You've given me an awful lot of information, Tia. I just want to bring you back to maybe 2 things for a quick comment. Very early on, you mentioned that whole milk will carry various diseases, etc., that the cow might have, or the amount of antibiotics that cow has got down through her life. So that's one thing that I suppose mitigates against using whole milk. Would I be right there?
Yes. The AMR is massive, as you know, millions die a year from antimicrobial resistance, and we have withdrawal periods for a reason. But if you think of it, if you are feeding your calf milk that contains antibiotics or is passing on these diseases, you're setting up your future herd for it's not failure, but I suppose it is harder to treat them against, say, mastitis, or if they got a scour or pneumonia. Antibiotics won't work. So to be honest with you, you're actually adding more cost to your system down the line trying to cure them when antibiotics don't work. When you can avoid that by feeding them milk replacer, you're mitigating that issue out, and you're essentially your calf is a lot healthier. Do you know?
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to come back to was that listening to you there and giving all that advice, I got the impression that you need to be using, if you're using milk replacer, you use one, I'm not saying the manufacturer, but one batch of milk replacer for maybe the first 5 to 6 weeks life of the calf, and then you change to something else. Is that correct?
No. So what I meant was, if you're told your milk replacer, say your skim versus your whey. So your skim curds in the room, and it keeps the calf fuller for longer. So you can use both on twice a day system, but the skimmed is more suitable then if you want to transition to once a day feeding after 5 weeks. So you don't necessarily have to change from whey to skim. You can start off with, skimmed, but that skim milk replacer is then more suitable if you wish to move to once a day, for labour issues and stuff like that. But, you can do once a day with the whey, but skimmed is more suitable because it forms that curd in the stomach and makes the calf fuller for longer.
Okay. Well, look, thanks very much for all that information. And again, thank you ever so much for joining us here on Tip FM this morning. That, listeners, was Tia Broderick from Teagasc. Listeners, my next guest this morning is Michael Slattery, and Michael Slattery is with Inform Nutrition Ireland, and we're going to be talking about the company because they are down there in County Cork. We're going to talk a little bit about their history and then about the products that they have for farmers, and in particular their mineral products, or their products that go into the various types of mineral that you might be going to buy in your farm store. Good morning, Michael, and thanks very much for joining us.
Morning, Jim. Thank you for having me.
Okay, now, Michael, Inform Tuition, you're celebrating 40 years. So will you give us a little bit about the history, Michael?
Yeah, the company was founded back in 1986. There was two guys involved at the time, Dennis Toomey, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, and Martin Byrne. And Martin was a technical guy working with a UK-based mineral company at the time, and Dennis was an operations guy. He managed at Macroom Mills in County Cork, and the two came together and formed Inform Nutrition at some stage in 1986.
And you've had many, milestones since as well, haven't you?
Oh, they have, yeah. No, I'm only with the company myself for the last 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
But I started working back in the October '91 with a competitor in County Cork, and I wasn't long hearing about Inform Nutrition, and eventually I had to join them, Jim, at some stage. Yeah, they're a great company, very innovative, and they have a sister company then that's involved in nutraceuticals. It developed out of Inform Nutrition. It's called Merview Laboratories, and that's based in Watergrass Hill.
Right.
And they have a big complex there, and they produce nutraceuticals, which is sort of nutraceuticals. It's sort of a word kind from nutrition and pharmaceuticals, and basically all natural products, all herbs, essential oils, plant extracts, minerals, vitamins, trace elements that they combine to provide health benefits. And they're treating numerous range of animals, from pets, equine, camels, horses, dogs, cats, and ruminants, and sheep, the whole lot.
Right.
They have a fantastic range of products there.
And in 2023, then you went into a major phased multi-million investment program began. I presume that's still ongoing, is it, Michael?
Oh God, it is, Jim. Yeah, I suppose, look, no company can stand still and to try and do anything. if you're looking to improve automation and, I suppose, reduce the labour input and everything is going bulk and automation and requiring automation. So, yeah, there's a lot of investment, ongoing investment going in, and there's big plans there for the next kind of 2 years there as well, which will increase our capacity in the plant, increase the level of automation, lead to improved operational efficiencies, and I suppose increase our capabilities as well to innovate and for the range of products that we produce. And again, we're on the one premises since for the last 40 years, so I suppose the general facilities need upgrading as well, Jim, and continually,
And where actually in Cork is the one premises? Is that in Macroom?
It's in White's Cross, which is just above Glenmire on the way into Cork.
All right, yeah, okay.
If you're going down the hill into the Glenmire, you just turn up to the right, and it's only 3-4 miles up there.
Tell us then a little bit about the minerals. Now, I know we were having a chat before we went on air here that you really supply minerals to the various compounders of various mixes that are used to feed animals. So tell us a little bit about that side of the business.
Yeah, sure. There's a couple of strings to our bow, Jim. We provide, I suppose, premixes into a lot of the ruminant feed mills, the people that are manufacturing animal feed, such as the sponsors of your program, there are Liffey Mills, and the former sponsors, Brett Brothers in Callan, and a lot of the feed mills that are dotted around the country. A number of them are owned by the co-ops, and more of them are owned then by are privately owned. And we'd be dealing with a good number of those. We'd also be dealing then with a lot of the people that are manufacturing pig feed, and indeed the pig home mixers, because a lot of them would be licensed feed millers themselves because of the amount of feed that they're feeding. About 50% of the pigs in the country are fed what we call home mixed, so they're mixing the feed directly on the farm themselves. And we would have two specialist pig nutritionists on farm all day, every day, visiting and supporting those customers. And then we have a range. We produce a range of, I suppose, farm minerals and TMR range of minerals for total mixed ration for guys that have diet feeders for feeding directly on farm. A lot of those would include an additive that we've developed ourselves over the years, Iodex. It's a combination product. It's a more bioavailable, protected form of iodine, which is a particular trace element that can be problematic on a number of dairy farms if there's a deficiency. And we find Iodex works extremely well. We also then manufacture the Sweetlix range of mineral buckets that you see, I suppose, in a lot of the merchant premises and in co-op branches, pre-calvers, post-calvers, buckets for calf to beef, equine buckets, dedicated sheep buckets, high mag then for the tetany time of the year. And about 18 months ago, we started producing an organic range of farm minerals. It's the first fully certified range of organic minerals that are produced in the country. So as it stands, we've just 2 buckets within that range. One is a feed bucket that a lot of the guys, in particular sheep farmers up the west and all that have converted to organic, are going into it. And then we've a mineral bucket there as well, again for dairy, beef and sheep animals and for sheep.
And that's primarily for farmers that are gone wholly organic, that particular product.
It's just 2 buckets in a what we call Organolix is the range. It's just 2 buckets in that range,
Oh, okay. Yeah?
Yeah, that's it, Jim. Yeah, no, it's going well for us. Like the early days, but we launched here in the last 18 months.
Michael, what about then, farmers that are throw minerals into their feed mix or animals that are farmers that put, we'd say, sprinkle it on silage that's in front of that throw in front of the animals. You do have that bagged mineral as well, I presume.
Oh, we do. Yes, we have our own range, Jim, and then a number of the trade customers that we deal with, we'd be producing for them in their own label as well.
Oh, right, okay.
So there'd be a range of maybe 5 or 6 different minerals within the range, directly targeted for specific animals and specific reasons. There's most guys this time of the year now, in particular dairy guys and guys with suckler cows, would be feeding a pre-calver mineral. Maybe 100, 120 grams per head per day, sprinkled in front of the animals on top of the silage.
Yeah.
And even for farmers that don't have a specific mineral problem, it's more or less an insurance policy at this stage. A huge most. There'd be very few dairy farmers that are serious about their business that wouldn't be feeding a pre-calver at this stage.
Of course they would, and we're nearly into the calving season now, and they'd want to have been feeding that for the last 4 weeks. But anyway, Michael, I was talking to some farmers in Clare last year on the programme I produced here in County Clare. And they were telling me that you do a supplement for them. It's a specific mineral that is needed in the burn.
Yes, Jim. Yeah, there's a group of farmers there in the Burren region, and they were having, I think, major problems with weak calves and calves dying shortly after birth, and one of our nutritionists would have worked very closely with them and developed a mineral which they now feed to cows before calving. It's a good quality pre-calver mineral. There's a few other bits and pieces and more bioavailable elements in it specifically for them there. And they're on it there, I think, the last 2 or 3 years, and it seems to be working very well. At least they're coming back every year looking for it anyway, Jim. So and it seems to be going fairly well.
Now, of course,
we can do that. We can address specific issues that arise on farms,
that's very, very interesting, because it'd be very hard to get some companies to say, right, we'll develop a mix that suits your particular part of the country, whether that's Cork or Tipperary or Kilkenny or wherever we're going. You can do it for a specific region, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Like it's like all production plants. I suppose if you're making specials, it reduces your throughput through the plant, but like when or through the mill. But I mean, in the mineral business, you need to be able to customize the product,
right,
to deal with specific problems. So it's part of what we do, and indeed, some of the investment that we're putting in is to create a new product line or a new production line over the next 18 months, 2 years, and which will improve our capability even further.
And if I was to say to you then, Michael, before we finish this morning, I want to buy minerals. How do I know I'm getting the minerals that are made in County Cork, your mineral? Yeah,
well, we have a technical sales advisor and nutritionist working in each province.
Right.
The guy in Cork, based in Munster, is a Tumivara man, Conor Delaney. He would be familiar to maybe a number of farmers that are listening to the programme here.
Yeah.
And we have a guy based in the north of Ireland as well, and we have a guy in the UK and in Scotland. So everything is done electronically now, Jim. We're available on the website there as well, informnutrition.com. Okay. I can give out phone numbers there, no problem. But if anyone just goes onto the website, they can get it. Okay. And we're only a phone call away, and eager to help people.
Yeah, well, just in case anybody has any concerns with regard to the minerals they're getting and would like to have a chat with some of your field persons out there, like the man in Tumivara, can you just give out one phone number just in case somebody might ring up after this particular interview?
Yeah, so it's Conor Delaney, and he's 086 855 0759.
Okay, well, look at Michael. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. That's great information for farmers who, in particular, feed quite a lot of minerals to their animals, and particularly pre-calving at this time of the year. And of course, we'll be seeing the buckets and the other types of applications where for the rest of the year, depending on what, I suppose, mineral is lacking in any herd. So it's been great talking to you. May we wish you every success, and well done for being in the business for the last 40 years.
Thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate the call.
Listener, that was Michael Slattery from Inform Nutrition Ireland. Listeners, my next guest this morning is Ewan Mullins. And you may remember I had Ewan on about this time last year as well, because he's in Oak Park, and the National Tillage Conference is coming up next week. It's going to be held in the Larratt House Hotel on next Wednesday, the 28th. and hopefully Ewan now is going to set the scene for us. Good morning, Ewan, and you're welcome back to Ag Report on Tip FM.
Good morning, Jim. Delighted to be here.
Okay, it's good to hear your voice again. So another year has gone around, and the year past has been a challenging year for tillage farmers.
It has, definitely. I mean, we look back on 2025 and the performance in the field was very strong. We returned some very good yields thanks to the skill and expertise of the sector and the farmers, but also we had very good growing conditions. But unfortunately, that didn't translate into a solid profitability and good returns for the sector, and that obviously was very disappointing from when we look back on the year. But our conference is coming around, as it does every year in January, last Wednesday in January, the 28th, and we hope that people who come to it will see some of the positive advancements that are being made from a research and a KT side, which we believe will help competitiveness and ultimately profitability of the sector in the years ahead.
And since this time last year, Ewan, has there been, now there's never going to be a seismic jump in any of the knowledge that we have, but have we gathered some little bit of knowledge that may help tillage farmers into the future?
We have. I mean, we have a really strong, unique selling point from the Irish tillage sector, and that's the low carbon footprint of the grain and the produce that we produce. And this is getting traction, both nationally and internationally. Now, we have more work to do there. We use a benchmarking tool called AgNav, and we need more tillage farmers to register with that, because the more information we get, the greater the weight of evidence that will allow us to highlight what we already know, that, look, Irish grain has a low carbon footprint, one of the lowest globally. And as I said, that's a unique advantage that people who are using Irish grain for feed or for food processing can exploit for their own markets. And that then has to deliver a premium for the tillage farmer, and equally for people in other sectors, livestock and dairy sectors, and the processing within those sectors. If they're not looking to source domestic grain, we know that a lower carbon footprint ingredient in feedstock is a key driver for them. So we can produce it domestically, and the research we're showing is that domestic production is very good. And it's something that we have to highlight more. And our work at the Tillage Conference that will be presented will show some of the advantages we're seeing in that area.
Okay, and before we go to the tillage, to everything that's going to happen on next Wednesday, I'd just like to bring you back to AgNav. Now, I was in Oak Park on the day in which the Minister launched it last summer. And would you explain to the listener briefly what it does?
Yeah, so AgNav is very straightforward for the person who registers to put in their input. It just requires several bits of information in terms of the farming practice, the crops that are grown, yields that are returned, and it takes, we're not talking a huge amount of time, and it's really important for us because we have farmers registered who are putting in their data that supports the research that we've already done with our stakeholders. And the more people we get putting the information in, as I said, it gives us a greater perspective across the whole of the sector. And that's a really important advantage to what we have. So AgNav is basically just a portal. It can be accessed through the website or through any device, and it's very straightforward to use.
Okay, well now, and I suppose you would put out a call for any farmer that isn't using AgNav, that they really should consider using it.
Absolutely, and at the conference next week there'll be a stand with specialists there and advisors who can support farmers in just seeing it first of all, understanding it, and we'll be able to explain the benefit of it and how straightforward it is to input that data.
Okay. Now, getting to the conference itself, okay, you have the usual list of speakers. So can you just briefly go through what tillage farmers likely to see and hear, more importantly, in Lariat House on next Wednesday?
So what we have is we're going with the same format again, Jim. We have 3 sessions in the morning. We've shortened the presentations. We've expanded the opportunity for discussion with panel discussions. And in the first session, it's competitiveness and sustainability. So as we talked about, our grain is competitive. We have unique selling points, but there are some gaps there that we need to address. And the speakers will talk about that, and more importantly, the plans we have to address them. Then we have a session on grass weeds. Grass weeds, as we know, are probably the single biggest challenge to the sector. And we have guest speakers from the UK coming over to give us the insight from their perspective, because they're probably further down the road. Well, they are further down the road in terms of dealing with grass weeds, but also they'll be highlighting some scenarios where farmers maybe didn't take it as seriously as they should have had in the UK and the consequences of that. So there's lessons to be learned there that we need to exploit. And then also we have our research snapshots, which is the opportunity for our PhD students and our early career students, our researchers, to step up and explain their research in literally 5 or 6 minutes. And we're touching on clubroot. We have a new project on clubroot, which is an important disease of brassicas. We need to survey populations that are out there. We need to define the problem before we can come up with solutions for it. We also have a presentation on the importance of new barley varieties against BYDV. Some exciting research there on how those varieties can actually mitigate the transmission of the virus from plant to plant. We have a short presentation on the added value potential of rye. Rye is becoming a very important crop. It fits very well into our rotations, can add some good, strong economic benefit to the rotation. And we know that rye is used in food outlets in parts of Europe, so why can't we use it here in Ireland? We grow it well, and we have some nice research on that. And there's several other research snapshots through the morning as well.
Good. And then you have lunch, and what happens between lunch and the time that the conference ends?
So then we spin out into the workshops, and the workshops is where attendees have the opportunity, when they register online, they can register for 3 of the 4 workshops. And the workshops format has worked very well because it's a smaller audience and smaller rooms, so people are probably feeling a bit more relaxed, and they're encouraged to challenge the speakers, the researchers, the advisors, and stakeholders who are on those panels in the workshops. And the feedback we got last year was very positive because, people can go to the workshops with very specific questions about their own farm, whether it's disease control. We have a workshop on disease control decisions for 2026. There's one on weed clinic. There's also one on new breeding techniques and developments at the EU, and one on competitiveness and sustainability, which is around AgNav and some of the other economic tools we're developing. So those workshops work very well for us as well, Jim, because we get very clear feedback from our stakeholders and attendees, and we always greatly appreciate that. And they're very quick to tell us if we're missing something, and that's very important for our program.
Right. And just one last question to you. It mightn't be something that happens at the conference, but we're basically talking about, shall we say, the commercial growing of cereal crops in particular. But are you in any way touching the growing of organic cereals?
So not at the tillage conference this year, no, we're not. But on saying that, we do have 3 active research projects in that area. One in particular around pulses, so protein crops. We know there are premiums there for organic feed, and there's a shortage of organic feed. So we're working with our advisors on that. And it's a very valid point because there's lessons in the organic sector that we can learn from for our integrated pest and weed management strategies in the conventional sector. So it's definitely something that's on our radar.
Okay, before I let you go, will you give the full details of the conference, the time, starting times, the place, the where, everything, so that my listeners here in Tipperary will have all the details they need going down, and then, of course, how they can register for the conference?
Sure. So it's on next Wednesday, the 28th, in the Lyrat Conference Centre in Kilkenny. Very easy to access, no issues with parking. And doors open at 9 a.m. and pre-registration is essential, and registration is very straightforward. Just go to teagasc.ie and you'll see the link on the homepage. Put in your information, select your workshops that you want to attend in the afternoon, and then when you arrive in the Lyrat, you walk in, you get your badge, there'll be tea and coffee ready for you, and then we kick off shortly after 9 o'clock, but obviously there's time before that to catch up with friends, neighbours and colleagues.
Okay, well, look at Ewan. Thanks very much for joining us. That, listeners, was Ewan Mullins from Oak Park talking about the National Tillage Conference, which takes place on next Wednesday in the Lyrat House Hotel. Listeners, my next guest this morning is Alan Dillon from Teagasc, and Alan is in Moore Park, and there is a very special event, calf to beef event, taking place next Thursday the 29th in the Ballycastine Hotel at 7 o'clock. And Alan is with me to tell me all about it and try to get as many farmers who are rearing calf to beef animals to attend that particular meeting. Good morning, Alan, and thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks very much.
Okay, Alan, I suppose a little bit of the background to this. I suppose it's all got to do with falling milk prices and rising prices for beef animals.
Yeah, it's I suppose something that we're in a place now we didn't think we'd be a couple of years ago. You go back even 2 springs ago to 2024, there was a lot of trouble shifting calves off dairy farms and very lackluster demand at certain times. You know, storm stopped the boats and there was trouble with calf slaughtering, etc. And suddenly, in the last the spring of 25 and probably the spring too, there's going to be a very, very big demand for calves. Beef prices rising dramatically has been the key to it all. We've gone from that €5 mark up to somewhere between 7 and 8 fairly consistently for the last 12 months. So I suppose this conference is, highlighting, some of the work that we're doing with people that are buying calves and taking them through to finish. And we're going to look at, bringing people together to show what's happening. That in terms of the first thing is the profitability of the system. I'm going to talk with myself about how our demonstration farms, about 17 or 18 demonstration farms around the country, and we analyse the profitability annually of how they do. So we're going to show a bit about how they're doing in terms of profits, the range of profits between the various farmers, and look at some of the things that cause high profits, low profits, and find what makes a guy in this system is going to make money. What does he do different to everyone else? Nicky Byrne in Teagasc Grange is going to be down, and he's going to analyse the CBV. So this commercial beef value is essentially a monetary rating, a rating system on calves, beef calves from dairy cows and from suckler animals as well, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it gives you basically kind of a guide as to whether an animal is good, bad, or indifferent in terms of its CBV. And that's really, what we want to show is that try to get people to understand that using better bulls on dairy cows can lead to a far superior animal for beef production than what we've seen in the past. And we have a good bit of data coming there from the national figures to show that higher CBV calves are leaving more money, and it is worth sourcing them if you can. The problem we often have, I suppose, is trying to gauge what are they worth, what's one worth versus the other, what's a 1-star CBV versus a 5-star one worth. And Nicky will go a bit into that, showing what they deliver. So, while not every car is going to have a high CBV value, you can still buy the low ones and make money, but it depends what you pay for them day one. You're only in a trading system. And then we have Chloe Miller. She's a technician with Teagasc, and she's involved in the Teagasc Tipperary calf to beef farm there that they leased feathers with Dawn. And essentially what they're just going to talk about there is they have a kind of an unusual pricing system they developed for buying calves. And it's based on the weight of the calf and the CBV of the calf. And it goes up or down based on how heavy the calf is and how high or low the CBV is. So it'll be just interesting just to explain that, to show how we work it on the pure basis of CBV and weight, rather than, I suppose, visually looking at the calves. And look, it's not 100% straightforward. She'll go through it, I'm sure, in more detail. But last year we had to give a top up to all the farmers that we purchased calves off for the Tipperary calf to beef farm, because calf prices shot up later in the spring. So look, it's not perfect yet, but it's an interesting model to try and put some science to it. And also, you'll talk a bit about I suppose, managing the health of the calves. There's 390 calves or thereabouts, and going up to well over 400 calves going to be coming into that farm next spring, and just to show how they manage the health status, ensure as little as possible issues with calf pneumonia and scour and that, and such big numbers coming in from different sources. And at the end of the day, we're going to have Matt O'Keefe is going to be chairing it, and we're going to have a panel discussion with 2 farmers and an advisor. So Peter O'Hanlon is one of our dairy beef farmers that's been with us for a long number of years, a demonstration farm. He's buying in 250 calves there in Kilkenny and taking them all to the finish, and is going very well at the minute with us now. And also the manager of the Prairie Calf to Beef farm, Jack Deland, will give an outline to how things have gone in that farm in the last 2 years. And with Tommy Cox, and he's an advisor on the Tipperary on the Dairy Beef 500 program, and he is going to outline just, I suppose, what he's seen around the country in the last 12 months that has changed on farms, and what changes farmers are going to make in the next year. And I'm sure the price of calves is probably the big thing. What are they worth this year? That's probably going to form a part of this discussion as well, as to see basically where we can pitch ourselves in terms of what we pay for these calves compared to other years.
Alan, you mentioned something earlier in the interview about sourcing calves. Now, I think that's going to be a problem this year. How are people going to be able to source enough calves for whatever system they have? Because I think a lot of dairy farmers will try to retain more calves than they would have in previous years because of the price of milk.
It's a possibility, yeah, then maybe. I don't know now, because I suppose if you look at it 2 ways, the price of milk could be down, but you're probably dealing with a much inflated calf price starting off. So I mean, we're getting maybe 150 a couple of years ago for an Angus calf, and suddenly people are offering you 350, out of the yard of the same age. I mean, that's a nice little bit of extra profit for yourself, no extra work. They do have other issues then, I suppose, when the flush of calves come, the capacity isn't there, I'd say, in most farms to hold them very long. And labour is an issue. And then I suppose you have nitrates as well, that's going to catch them. The calves will be adding to the nitrates problem as the year progresses, and might cause people to maybe move them on. Now look, a lot of beef farmers would be probably happy if there are dairy farmers that reserve the calves for them and let them off them, but it's a bit more expensive at a later stage to spare them the work. But that'd be a fantastic scenario if we could get that to happen. But I don't know, maybe they will, maybe they won't. It's hard to tell, but I suppose the big thing from a dairy farmer's point of view is if someone's offering you a few hundred extra for all your calves, maybe a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush.
The other question I want to ask you, will there be a discussion around genomics of the dairy beef as well? I know you touched on it earlier, but that's going to be a very important aspect of, dairy to beef calf.
Yeah, well, Nicky will go through it fairly comprehensively, and I suppose he'll show what's basically take the good, the bad, and the ugly genetics. What's the difference when they're killed at the end of the day? Look at the national data coming through, and there is a lot of data because there's so many calves have been genotyped from the dairy herd the last couple of years. You could hang your hat on the data that the correct sires have been used, and the data is accurate. Now, look, management could come into this in a way. That's the other thing. Okay, you could say, you have a decision to make yourself as a farmer. You can either finish an animal at 21 months, you can finish it at 24 months, or you can run up to 30 months, depending on your system. So sometimes that can skew the data slightly, and might give you showing an animal that can reach the utmost potential. And because of the stocking rates of beef farms typically are low, it sometimes doesn't pay people to maybe run them through and feed them heavy in the second winter and have them gone young. Sometimes it suits them to let them on for a third year. But there will be a lot of fairly concrete data showing that basically the high CVV ones do work, and it's trying to push this message to dairy farmers when they're picking their bulls for this year that they focus on carcass and getting these high carcass bulls in place that will lead to better calves, and farmers will pay more for them, guaranteed, next year if they're on the ground.
Okay. So before I let you go and look at again, thanks for joining us and telling us all about this. Can you just give the details of the event that's taking place in Ballycastine on Thursday night at 7 o'clock?
Yeah, so it's 29th of January, so it's Thursday the 29th at 7 p.m. And look, we'll have the 3 presentations, and we'll have the panel discussion afterwards, and there'll be some refreshments served at the end of it as well for everyone that's there. So in Ballycastine Hotel.
And will last what, about 2 hours?
Yeah, I'd say we'll be out the door by 9 o'clock. Yeah.
Okay, well look at Alan, thanks very much for joining us this morning. That, listeners, was Alan Dillon from Teagasc talking about the dairy beef event which is taking place in Ballycastine, as he said, on Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. That's Thursday the 29th. That, listeners, is Agri Report for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you will join me at the same time next week. Coming up next is the news at 10 o'clock, and after that, Eamon Dwyer presents Down Your Way.